Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Vessalatu vesselamu ala Resulina Muhammed ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ecmain. Let me begin by greeting with the Mevlevi selam. Vakti şerifler hayrola, hayırlar fethola, şerler defola. Let this auspicious moment pave the way for the achievement of noble deeds. Let all the doors of goodness be opened. Let all the causes of evils be averted. Let all the prayers of the worshippers be accepted. Let the hearts of the dervishes be overjoyed by the love of God. This is an opening supplication kind of prayer from the Mevlevi tradition. Today's Mathnawi talk, I would like to first begin by giving some introductory remarks with regard to the role of the Mathnawi. Mathnawi, as Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi has clearly pointed out in the introduction to his Mathnawi, Dibaja, is the book which teaches and explores, discovers the foundations and the foundations and the foundations of Islamic religion, faith. So the very purpose of the Mathnawi is to explain the fundamental aspects of Islam and also tariqah, meaning the prophetic path, and also haqiqah, the reality itself, and also spiritual knowledge, illuminative knowledge, which we call ma'rifah. So the whole purpose of the Mathnawi, according to Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi, is to teach humanity or human beings the essence of religion. Therefore, Mathnawi has been hailed by the Mevlevis, by the lovers of Mevlana and those who follow the Mevlevi tariqah, as the versified poetic version of the Quran, or Persian translation of the Quran. And because of that, most of the commentators on the Mathnawi draw a parallelism, a comparison, an analogy between the Quran and the Mathnawi. So much so that Mevlana Celaleddin has taken Quran as a model for himself, not only as a guide, as a main reference, as a source, but also in terms of its style, not the content, but style itself, as a reference for himself, on the basis of which he laid down the pattern of the Mathnawi. For example, the first 18 couplets, which begins with Bishnav, listen, as our colleague just beautifully performed, the sound or the voice of the instrument of Ney. So the first 18 couplets, which, as we learn from the Mevlevi sources, written by Mevlana himself and handed over to by him to his most intimate disciple, the scriber of the Mathnawi, Hüsamettin Çelebi. And he said, this is the 18 couplets, and take it, and now, from now on, continue to write what comes from my tongue and from my heart. So these 18 couplets of Mathnawi for the Mevlevis is just like the first chapter of the Quran, Fatiha, to the Quran. So, which means Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Quran, in relation to Quran, is like a key, is like a kind of opener. Exactly in the same manner, the 18 couplets of the Mathnawi for the Mevlevis is an opener, is a key, which somehow summarizes the most essential teachings of the whole Mathnawi in these 18 couplets. Exactly likewise, the Surah Al-Fatiha, the first chapter of the Quran, which is called Quran, the mother of the Quran, gives the gist of the Quran in this chapter. So again, for the Mevlevis, and as they follow the teachings of Mevlana, Mathnawi, it means that the Mevlana has chosen couplet, like as a form of poetry, the style of Mathnawi, like lyrics, 2 by 2 couplets, which means, according to Quran, Allah Almighty created everything in pair, 2 by 2, which means everything has a corresponding entity. Everything has an opposite. Like all the plants, all the beings, all the existent beings are subject to this rule. Whatever God created 2 by 2 in pair. So Mevlana, referring to Quran, has taken the style of Mathnawi as the title of his book. So Quran speaks all strata of people. Everyone may understand the Quran according to his or her level of understanding. Exactly in the same manner, Mathnawi has degrees of understanding, layers of understanding, and everyone understands the Mathnawi according to his or her degree of understanding. Therefore, kellimun nas ala qadari uqulihim, as Prophet Muhammad said, speak to the people according to their level of understanding. So Mevlana, you can find in the Mathnawi, okay, lots of outspoken, very explicit, very illuminating, most telling stories. Everybody can understand. But at the same time, there are intricacies, there are subtleties, there are like kind of, complicated, very complex concepts and the items which are too difficult to understand. So it requires deeper perspective, deeper meditation, or it requires at least some kind of learning and the like prerequisite to be able to understand the Mathnawi. So Quran also has degrees of understanding, or to say the least, there are external meaning, internal meaning. Yeah, like there are external meaning, internal meaning. So in the Mathnawi, Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi speaks about, for example, form, meaning surah, the external aspect of something. But also he says there is mana, the meaning of that thing. So what's important for him is to go to the meaning, the haqiqah, the reality itself, rather than just, clinging or just adhering to the appearance. So having said this, if Mathnawi aims to enlighten, convey the essential teachings of the Quran, and so to speak, it serves like a mirror for the Quran, as a mirror for the Quran, then it requires us to show the required respect for the Mathnawi. It's not any book. It is the book. It's not an ordinary book. Because It is a spiritual text. It's a mystical text. And first and foremost, of course, it is a reference and it is an explanation of the Quran. Therefore, it depends on the intention of the person to benefit from the Mathnawi. If the intention of the person is to benefit from the Mathnawi, if he or she approach the Mathnawi without any prejudice, without any predilection, without any preconception, he or she will definitely benefit from the Mathnawi. But that benefit depends on his or her training.
Comes to me naked.
Exactly. Exactly. It's beautiful. So leave all luggages behind. Leave all your, luggage behind. Come to me, with a clear mind, so that you will understand. So, because of this, I could point out that every word chosen by Mevlana, every story related by Mevlana, every symbol used by Mevlana must have a wisdom, must have a significance, not in vain. Definitely he must have a purpose. So yes, he employs very unconventional language, very unconventional style. It's not like a scholarly book. It's a poetic book. But it's a very profound in meaning. So he makes use of a lot of, fables, stories. A lot of humorous stories, And he says, beyti men beyti nist, iklim est. Hazli men, hazli nist, talim est. Look, my poetry, my couplets, my poems are not simply poems or couplets. On the contrary, they are like a land of meaning, continent, like a continent which has iklim, which have climates. In other words, it is a treasury. It's a treasure. And he continues, and don't take my jokes simply as jokes. They are there not just to make you laugh, to put you on your smile and laughter. These are subtle stories, but each one has a purpose. Each one has a lesson for you to learn. So each story definitely, Mevlana relates in the Mathnawi for a purpose. So, let me share at least today 2 of them. Now, one is coming, Mathnawi, Volume 1, Defter 1, and verse number 1080. Begin. And here, Mevlana Jalaleddin Rumi speaks about the story of fly, kind of mosquito, gnat, and the title of the story is this: the baseness of the full interpretation given by the fly. In the Quran there are references to fly, and for example, in one verse says Allah doesn't shy to give an example for you to people understand this, the example of, or the similitude of fly. Because fly is important, as although it's the smallest tiny animal, okay, it has no strength. When you just hit the fly, you may kill it, okay, you may hurt it. But he said, don't take it, don't belittle this fly. It's it's a being, it's a creature. Almighty has given him a life. I mean, the fly is alive. But he says, he doesn't speak about the weakness or strength of the fly. But Mevlana uses the story of fly here, the symbol of fly, as follows. He says, look, fly once the fly finds itself in the middle of a urine, okay, urine of a horse. You know, urine is of course, and he said, oh my God, actually he was like on a straw, small piece of straw, okay, and then this straw was sailing in the urine, in this liquid, in this watery, okay, of the horse. And let me read it to you, then I will explain. He says, the fly was lifting up his head like a pilot, captain, on a blade of straw and a pool of, sorry to use the expression, ass's urine or horse's urine. He said, fly, I have called them sea, meaning the urine must be sea, ocean. And the straw, I am on it, must be a ship, and I am the captain. I am the pilot. So he says, I have called them sea and ship, he said, and I have been pondering over that, interpretation for a long while. Look, he said, here is the sea, and this is ship. I am the pilot and the skilled in navigating the ship. So he was propelling the raft on the sea. That small quantity appeared to him illimitable. He says, Mevlana, let me finish first. That urine was boundless in relation to him, like an ocean, endless ocean, to the eye of the fly. Where was the vision that should see it truly? You see, Mevlana is saying everyone's vision or everyone's understanding depends on his vision. If your vision is broad, wide, profound, so will be your understanding. If your eye is small, your understanding will be small. If your vision is limited, your understanding will be limited. So your understanding will be exactly the way fly interprets itself, himself, and the ship and the urine. He says, his world, fly's world, extends just as far as his eyesight reaches. His eyesight is so big, and his sea is big in the same proportion. So with the false interpreter of the Quran, now that is the point now, Mevlana Rumi makes his point. He says, so with the false interpreter of the Quran, like the fly, his imagination is full as his urine, and his conception is worthless as the straw. If the fly leave off interpreting by following his own opinion, fortune will turn that fly into a humay. One who possesses this divine indication of the meaning, true meaning, is not a fly. His spirit is not analogous to his outward form. He says, you interpret the Quran according to your desire. To you, the sublime meaning is degraded and perverted. So what Mevlana teaches us by this beautiful anecdote, beautiful, simile or metaphor of fly. Couple of important messages he gives. Look, there is urine, which resembles ocean. There is straw, which stands for ship. And there is fly, which stands for the pilot, the captain. So if you would like to guide the people around you, you can guide only according to your intelligence, your understanding, and your wisdom, your experience, and your perspective. If you do not have the necessary training as a scholar or as a student in Arabic language, in Quranic exegesis, tafsir, in the hadith, in the history of the Quran. So when you pick up a verse from the Quran, your understanding will be limited to your timing and to your own imagination and to your own desire. And therefore, you will not convey the true meaning of the Quran. So he says, you need to first, deepen your understanding. Otherwise, you will remain under service. And you will remain only in the literal aspect of the Quran, not spirit and essence of the Quran. Exactly the fly. So he says, fly is navigating the straw because very small. Actually, let's say this is the magnitude, this is the extent of the urine, and there is a straw. Look at this. This is what he will understand. But if you deepen your knowledge, if you are well-versed, well-rooted, as the Quran says, رَاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, if you have a well-rooted, well-versed, learning, training in Islamic sources, in the Prophet, in the history, in the hadith, in the methodology of the tafsir, then of course, your understanding will be that deep and that, profound. So as you see, today, why I am saying this story? Unfortunately, today we see some people without going to the sources, without referring to the history of the Quran, without referring to the context of the Quran, which is the hadith, for example, which is the prophetic wisdom. They pick up one verse and make an interpretation just to suit their own needs. And he says, if you take the lesson from this story, and that interpretation only is binding for you, that is only for you, your interpretation, and that interpretation will not be extended, and will not be utilized, will not be applied, will not be appreciated by the people. And even moreover, because you have a limited understanding and your interpretation may damage Islam, may damage Muslim perception, may damage even the position of the Muslims as a whole, because you are quoting the Quran, you are quoting the Hadith. So, which means you need a serious scholarship. Now, of course, Mevlana goes far. Sharia is important before traveling on the path of the tariqah. That's the meaning of it. You have to equip yourself by learning from the authentic sources, from the teachers, all the formal aspects of Islam, all the requirement of religion, all the do's and don'ts, all the teachings of the Quran. This is the first. Therefore, Sharia is the must. Then, after that, you can undertake a spiritual journey under the guidance of the Sufi masters. And also we can conclude, we can derive from this story. If someone says, I am a sheikh without Sharia, don't consider him a sheikh. He is impostor. He's a charlatan. Because he doesn't have the Sharia. If you speak about tasawwuf is the fruit of the Sharia. Fruit is something to do with the last stage, culmination of the beauty of Islam. Therefore, it is ihsan, which means Worship God Almighty, Allah Almighty, as if you see Him. Although you don't see Him, yet He sees you. That's from the prophetic hadith. Okay, so, and also this story teaches us, you should choose the best teacher for you to learn. Also the best guide, best master, who is of course recognized, who is sincere, and who is literally an example for his people, which means he practices the prophetic akhlaq, the morality of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so this, we have many stories from Mawlana Jalaluddin Rumi. Going back to what I said in the very beginning of my talk, we never lose sight of the mission of Mawlana when we read the Mathnawi. This is not a simple poetry. However, one may evaluate, one may assess, one may praise the quality of poetry. No problem. This is the literature, literary. But as far as his real teaching is concerned, we know his mission is as a saint. I want to quote again, as a saint, as an intimate friend of Allah Almighty. He is the inheritor of the prophetic legacy. Remember, al-ulama'u varasatul anbiya. Likewise, awliya too. And that's exactly what he said. He said, if all the prophets are calling humanity to his path, meaning the path of Allah, okay, so they share the same purpose and the same mission, which means to communicate, to impart the revelation, the wisdom, the moral teachings to their own respective people. And every prophet has what we call wali. And if the prophet calls his people to the path of Allah, likewise wali or saint does the same thing, nothing else. His aim and mission to invite people, not only invite, also, okay, practice the subtleties and the teachings of the Quran as a whole, and internalize the teaching of the Quran, not external aspect, internal, which will lead ultimately what Mawlana Jalaluddin says, become a mard khuda, to become a man of God, or a universal man, or a perfect human being, as we say, al-insan al-kamil. And now let me connect this teaching of Mawlana with the meaning of the first 18 couplets. I'm not going to quote all of them. He says, the very purpose of the creation of human being, and also creation as a whole, for Mawlana, also for those Sufis, all the major Sufi tradition, Sufis, is to learn treasure of Allah. Not only learn the treasure, the beautiful names, qualities of Allah, but also to act in accordance with the will of Allah, which means Khalifa. Khalifa. Like to represent, to be vicegerent on the earth, to be measure, and serving in the name of Allah in the earth. That is the significance of human being. And when you look at the 18 couplets of the Mathnawi as a whole, gives us a story of the origin of human being, how he came to this earth from the world of Alast, Besmi Alast, pre-existence, meta-history, and how he longs for his or her reunion again with his origin. Okay? We all have come from him, and we have to remember our origin, and ultimately, eventually, we will return to him. So our story, our life story in this world is, and in fact, revolves around two things. To remember him, okay, and also to perform our duties in accordance with his will. And Dawood alayhi salam asked the question to Allah Almighty, as we learn from the sacred hadith, لِمَاذَا خَلَقْتَ الْخَلْقَ يَا رَبِّ. That Allah, he posed the question, oh God Almighty, why did you create the creation? And in response to this question posed by Dawood alayhi salam, Allah Almighty responded, and he said, Inni kuntu kenzen makhfiyen. I was once a hidden treasure. Here it is, and أحببت أن أعرف ولذلك خلقت الخلق. I love to be known. I desire to be known. I wanted to be known. Therefore, I create the creation. In this case, what our purpose is to discover, to unfold, okay? To learn the mysteries of Allah, to read the cosmos, to read all the existing beings, to read them in the name of Allah, as a reference to Him, as a pointer to Him, and also to take care of every being that was created by Him, because He created us, as a responsible human being. We are the one responsible. So responsibility of human being is to take care of what God Almighty created, whether humans, whether animals, whether plants, whether inanimate beings. Take care of the everything. Because why? He created us to read His wisdom, and also to protect them, to preserve them, to look after them, and also to make them aware, in other words, or to mold them, to guide them, and to give each of them its own due right. Respect all of them. So but Mevlana, as he says, everything begins with sincere adherence to the word of the Mathnawi, which means the word of wisdom. If you would like to take really good benefit and lesson from the Mathnawi, we have to pay attention closely, attentively, and sincerely, without any predilection, without any prejudice, without any preconception, as my colleague said, naked to his words. Only then he will, Mevlana will speak to us. Mevlana only then will speak to us. Will speak to us as like part of us, as one of us. Although he returned to God Almighty, Wuslat, how many years ago? Okay, 744 years ago. But with his Mathnawi, he is always with us. What is important in Islam is not the human being. What is left behind them by human being, their legacy, their teachings, all have gone, all they passed. We don't have Mevlana here, but we have a living Mevlana with us. His book, Mathnawi, and fihi ma fi, Mecalis-i Seba, Divan-ı Şemsi Kibir, and the Mektubat. So that's why, depending on our intention, depending on our capacity, depending on our propensity, as we say, istidat, depending on our willingness, depending on our enthusiasm, we will be able to understand the message of the Mathnawi. In proportion with your understanding, you will understand the Mathnawi. In proportion with the degree of, your aptitude, ability, propensity, you will take the message from the Mathnawi accordingly. That's why in the sense he says, we have to, let me read to the 18th couplet, last one, at least the 18th. Look, he says, "Oh my friends," here it is, "none that is raw will understand the state of the ripe." If someone is raw, immature, unprepared, has no willingness, has no readiness, that is, he's raw, unripe. He says, he will not be able to understand the wisdom of the mature person. He is raw. Remember what he said? I was raw, cooked, and burnt. So he will continue to remain in this state of rawness, raw. And then he says, therefore, my words must be brief. Farewell. Thank you.